Nothing peels back a person's polite facade quite like a little friendly competition. Over the years, I've found that how someone behaves on a tennis court says a lot about who they really are. Some players are gracious when they win and understanding when they lose. Others will throw a fit over a close line call in a weekend league match. If a man is an arrogant bully while chasing a ball, chances are he's the same once he steps off the court. Take Chad Larson, for example. Chad is the kind of guy who has to dominate every situation. At our suburban community in Cypress Cove, Texas, we often run into each other on the tennis courts at the Lakeside Club. He's a big guy, former college linebacker, about 6'3" with broad shoulders and an ego even broader. When Chad plays tennis, he blasts every shot as if he's trying to smash a hole through the fence. If a ball lands even a fraction near the line, he'll call it out in his favor with a smirk. And if he loses a point, there's always an excuse. The sun was in his eyes, the racket strings were loose, anything but admitting someone else bested him. I learned all this the first time I played against Chad in a casual doubles game last year. After watching him snarl at his own partner and puff himself up whenever he hit a winner, I thought, this is not someone I'd ever trust off the court either. Sure enough, his reputation around the neighborhood backs that up. Chad loves to show off his expensive truck, his flashy gadgets, and lately, my wife. Yes, Chad lives here in our well-manicured neighborhood, just a few streets over from me and my wife Vanessa. Cypress Cove is one of those upscale developments built around a community center, complete with a pool, gym, and tennis courts. Neighbors mingle at barbecues and homeowners association meetings, and news travels fast. It's the kind of place where everyone knows everyone else's business, for better or worse. I'd always been on polite terms with Chad. We ran in the same social circle, attended the same HOA meetings, exchanged nods at the gym, but I wouldn't call us friends. Not after seeing his true colors in competition. My polite distance didn't stop him from hovering around, though, especially around Vanessa. My wife Vanessa is a striking woman, and she knows it. At 34, she prides herself on her appearance. Platinum blonde hair always perfectly styled, a meticulously maintained yoga-honed figure, designer clothes even just to walk our dog. She runs a small fitness studio in town and moonlights as a wellness influencer online. So image is everything to her. People here half-jokingly call her the selfie queen of Cypress Cove because she's always documenting her life for her followers. I used to find it endearing how committed she was to her brand. Lately, I realize it was just one of many signs of her vanity. We married young, right after I left the Army and finished college. I'm 36 now, and for most of our 10-year marriage, I honestly believed we were happy, or at least content. We had our routines. I work as a security consultant for a tech firm these days, which basically means I sit in an office instead of patrolling overseas, but I still carry some of that military bearing with me. Vanessa built up her fitness business enough to lease a nice studio. We bought a 2-story brick home on Magnolia Court, made friends in the community, and looked like the picture-perfect couple at every neighborhood Christmas party. Sure, our careers kept us busy, and maybe the spark wasn't as fiery as in our 20s, but I never doubted her loyalty. I should have. Looking back, there were red flags I brushed aside. In recent months, Vanessa had grown emotionally distant, always preoccupied with her phone, or commenting on how boring our life had become. Our conversations felt like going through the motions. Our date nights dwindled. Intimacy, once spontaneous and fun, had become a scheduled formality, if it happened at all. I blamed the stresses of work or her obsessive focus on her online image. I never imagined the real reason might be another man. especially not Chad. Natalie Coleman saw it before I did, I think. Natalie is a good friend of ours. Actually, she became my tennis partner through Vanessa. Unlike my wife, I've always loved tennis as a hobby. It keeps me active and satisfies my competitive streak in a healthy way. Vanessa never cared for playing tennis. She preferred Pilates and spin classes. But one of her clients at the studio turned out to be a former high school tennis champ looking to get back into the sport. That was Natalie. Not long after Natalie joined Vanessa's Pilates class, my wife suggested that Natalie and I pair up for mixed doubles in the local recreation league. I remember meeting Natalie at one of the HOA mixers and immediately noticing her warm, genuine smile. She's around 30, with wavy chestnut brown hair and kind hazel eyes that always seem to be on the verge of a laugh. She had lost her husband a few years ago in a car accident, a tragedy that left her grieving and reeling through her late 20s. Getting back into fitness and tennis was part of her effort to rebuild her life. Despite everything she's been through, Natalie carries a positive energy that's infectious. We started practicing together and quickly developed an easy camaraderie on and off the court. For the past year, Natalie and I have played as partners in the Cypress Cove Tennis League. We practice together a couple of times a week and play matches on weekends. Spending so much time with her, I got to know Natalie well. She's empathetic, funny, and fiercely competitive in the best way. If I mess up a shot, she doesn't scold. She just says, "We'll get the next one, partner." And usually, we do. Honestly, it baffled me that someone as vibrant and attractive as Natalie was still single. She had plenty of admirers, but she confided in Vanessa, who passed it along to me, that she just hadn't met the right guy yet. "Hard to meet quality men when you're past 30 in this town," she'd joke. "All the good ones are taken." Then she'd assure us it was fine. She was focusing on herself and enjoying her independence. Of course, since she said all the good ones were taken, I sometimes wondered privately if she considered me one of those taken good ones. Not that I would ever have crossed that line. I was a married man, and Natalie respected that completely. She even became friends with both of us. Some evenings, she'd join me and Vanessa for dinner at our house after practice, or we'd all grab smoothies at the cafe by Vanessa's studio. It was never awkward or inappropriate. In fact, Natalie almost felt like a younger sister to me, albeit one I happened to click with remarkably well. Vanessa used to tease that Natalie was my tennis wife, since we spent hours strategizing our games and even texted about upcoming matches. She always said it in a joking tone, so I thought nothing of it. In hindsight, perhaps she was deflecting attention from her own extracurricular activities. One steamy Saturday in July, Natalie and I had an away match scheduled against a pair of strong players from a neighboring town. It was the kind of blistering Texas summer afternoon where the air ripples above the pavement. We decided to carpool in my truck to the other club to save gas and enjoy some company on the hour-long drive. When I pulled up to Natalie's house to pick her up, she stepped out in her tennis skirt and visor, looking every bit the part of a serious athlete ready to win. I noticed she had a determined glint in her eye and an extra spring in her step as she bounded over. "Ready to kick some butt today?" I greeted her with a grin as she climbed into the passenger seat. "You know it, Jason," she replied, returning the smile. "I've been practicing my serve all week. Those poor opponents won't know what hit them." We bantered about tactics as I navigated the highway out of Cypress Cove. Talking strategy with Natalie always put me in a good mood. Her enthusiasm was contagious, and it kept my mind off less pleasant things. To be honest, that week I had been more stressed than usual. Vanessa and I had a petty argument 2 nights before. She accused me of not supporting her work because I missed one of her live streams. I retorted that she seemed more interested in her Instagram audience than in me lately. We hadn't really resolved it. Vanessa spent most of the weekend holed up editing her latest video content, giving me the cold shoulder. I was hoping the space today might cool us both off. About 20 minutes into our drive, just as the highway signs indicated we were nearing the county line, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. I glanced at the screen. It was the team captain from the other club we were headed to. I answered via the truck's hands-free speaker. "Hey, this is Jason," I said. A man's voice responded, "Hi, Jason. It's Rob from Lakeside Tennis. Hate to do this last minute, but I'm afraid we have to postpone today's match." "Postpone? You're kidding me," I exclaimed, surprised. Natalie raised her eyebrows questioningly beside me. The voice on the phone sounded genuinely apologetic. "I wish I were kidding. We just got hit by a surprise thunderstorm out here. Courts are soaked and totally unplayable, and more rain is on the way. I tried calling earlier, but it went to voicemail." I realized I had left my phone in, my gym bag on silent. "Oh, I see. It's bone dry on our end," I said. I looked at the perfectly blue sky above the highway ahead. Not a cloud in sight for us, but summer storms in Texas can be weirdly localized. "All right, safety first. We'll reschedule as soon as possible." We hung up, and I slowed the truck, checking the next exit. "Well, that's a bummer," I sighed, signaling to turn around. Natalie frowned in confusion. "What happened? Why are we getting off here?" "Apparently a thunderstorm drenched their courts," I explained. "Match is off. We have to reschedule." She slumped back in her seat, clearly disappointed. "Ugh, I was really looking forward to playing today. I woke up early and everything." I couldn't help but chuckle at her pouting tone. "I know, me too. On the bright side, our whole afternoon just freed up. We were already heading back toward Cypress Cove. Maybe we can hit at our club instead, just for fun. Get some practice in. The weather's perfect here." Natalie perked up a little. "That could be nice. Or maybe we can challenge a couple of the ladies hanging around the club. I just want to hit something after psyching myself up." "Absolutely," I agreed. A casual practice sounded good, and it might distract me from my marital troubles for a bit longer. First, I just need to swing by my place. Since we have time, I'm going to grab my other racket. My backup strings are fresher than the ones I brought. "No problem," she said. "Your house is on the way anyway." Within minutes, we were pulling off the main road into Magnolia Court. Our house sits about halfway down the quiet cul-de-sac. Tall oak trees line the street, their leaves barely stirring in the still, humid air. I noticed Vanessa's car in the driveway as we rolled up. That was odd. She usually spent Saturday afternoons at her studio hosting group classes or out doing promotional photo shoots at scenic spots. Perhaps her schedule changed, or she decided to take a rare day off. I tried to ignore the uneasy flutter in my gut. There was no reason to be alarmed by her being home. Yet some intuition prickled at me. Still, I parked at the curb and left the engine running. "I'll be just a second," I told Natalie. "You can wait here in the AC." She nodded, picking up her phone. "Sure. I'll check if any of the girls are up for a pickup match." I jogged up to the front door and let myself in with my key. The house was cool and dim, the curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. Immediately, I was struck by how silent it was. No music, no TV, none of the usual sounds of weekend life. I hurried through the foyer toward the stairs, intending to dash to our bedroom where my racket hung on the wall rack. That's when I heard it. A muffled thump and a faint, drawn-out moan coming from down the hall. I froze. The sound was unmistakable, even if my brain wanted to deny it. It was the sound of someone in pleasure, and it had come from our master bedroom. I stood stock still, heart suddenly pounding in my ears. Maybe I misheard. Perhaps Vanessa was just watching something. Except I also heard a deeper tone, a man's voice, faint but distinct, grunting from the same direction. My body moved on its own, almost detached from my mind. Softly, I padded down the hallway, following the twisted noises that grew clearer with each step. With every moan, every rustle, my stomach clenched tighter. Part of me already knew what I would find. Yet I prayed I was wrong. The door to our bedroom was ajar. I peered through the narrow opening, hands trembling. And there it was, my reality shattering in an instant. Vanessa was on our bed, completely nude, her back arched off the mattress. Another body, definitely male, was entwined with hers. He was crouched between her thighs, clearly giving her intense pleasure. Vanessa's manicured fingers gripped the sheets, and her head was tilted back, eyes closed in ecstasy as she moaned, "Oh yes." Just like that, in a tone I'd not heard from her in a long time. My mind went blank and roaring all at once. It was like a bomb had detonated nearby. My vision tunneled, and a rush of blood hammered in my ears. I struggled to comprehend the scene in front of me, but it was sickeningly clear. That man ravishing my wife in our marital bed was none other than Chad Larson. I felt as if I'd been electrocuted and paralyzed. My muscles twitched with the urge to storm in and rip him off her, yet shock rooted me in place. I watched in mute horror as Chad straightened up, tossing his head back. He grabbed Vanessa's legs with his strong arms and positioned himself to enter her. In the dim light, I could just make out his face, set in a smug, hungry expression, as he pressed forward. Vanessa let out a cry of pleasure that pierced me like a dagger. That sound snapped me out of my trance. My breath caught painfully in my chest, and I stumbled back from the door, a guttural noise of anguish rising in my throat. I slapped a hand over my mouth before it escaped. I couldn't bear another second of this nightmare. Blinded by tears of rage and hurt, I staggered down the hall, forcing myself not to collapse then and there. My thoughts were a blur of outrage and despair. How could she? In our home, with him. Chad, of all people, Chad. The arrogant jackass who had always looked at her a little too long at pool parties, who always tried to one-up me in every conversation. And Vanessa, the woman I loved and trusted, giving herself to him in the bed we shared. I fumbled out the front door, quietly pulling it shut behind me. On the porch, I hunched over, hands on my knees, sucking in breaths of thick, humid air as if I'd just sprinted miles. I thought I might vomit right there in the hydrangea bushes from the shock. Natalie. I suddenly remembered Natalie was waiting in the truck. God, she might have seen me through the window. What state was I in? I wiped at my eyes quickly, though tears were still blurring everything. I had to hold it together at least until I got her home. With limbs that felt numb and robotic, I forced myself down the front path and back to the truck. The world around me seemed surreally normal. A neighbor was casually watering their lawn across the street. The distant buzz of a lawnmower droned on. How was everything not changed, shattered, when my life had just been blown apart? As I approached the driver's side, I saw Natalie's concerned face through the window. I must have looked pale as a ghost when I opened the door and collapsed into the seat. "Jason? Hey, are you okay?" she asked carefully. Her eyes searched my face. I realized I was shaking. I gripped the steering wheel hard, knuckles white. My voice came out strangled and rough. I can't. I couldn't finish the sentence. My brain wouldn't form words. Natalie gently reached over and turned off the ignition, which was still running. "Forget tennis practice," she said firmly. "You're not okay. Let me drive or let's go inside. Please talk to me." I shook my head violently. The idea of going back inside that house was unbearable. "No," I croaked. "Not here. I need to get out of here." "Okay," she said softly, trying to maintain calm. "Then I'm driving you to my place. It's just around the corner. We can figure it out there." I realized she had taken my keys, effectively stopping me from taking off in this state. Honestly, it's good she did. I was in no shape to safely drive. I didn't protest when she came around and helped me out of the driver's seat. Like a man in a trance, I slid over to the passenger side. My hands were trembling uncontrollably, heart battering my ribs as if to break free. Natalie guided the truck smoothly the few blocks to her cozy one-story house on a nearby street. I stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, fighting back the storm of emotions crashing through me. I couldn't speak. If I tried, I'd either start screaming or sobbing, maybe both. She parked in her driveway and shut off the engine. "Come inside," she urged gently. I let her lead me by the arm up her walkway and through her front door. The moment we stepped into the cool quiet of her living room, some last wall of defense in me crumbled. My knees felt weak. Natalie eased me down onto her sofa. A second later, she pressed a cold glass of water into my hand. "Take a sip," she said softly, sitting next to me. I did as instructed, though I barely felt the glass against my lips or the water going down. She watched me, her face the picture of concern. "Jason," she said after a moment, her voice almost a whisper, "please tell me what's going on. You're scaring me." I stared at the floor, at my tennis shoes against her patterned rug. My vision blurred again with hot tears of humiliation and anger. My throat was tight. I tried again. "I saw them." "Who?" she asked, confused. I inhaled a shaky breath and finally looked Natalie in the eyes. "Vanessa," I managed to say. "Vanessa and Chad, in my bedroom." Natalie blinked as the meaning of my words sank in. "No," she breathed in disbelief. "Oh my God, Jason. Are you sure?" I gave a bitter, broken laugh, hearing the raw hurt in it. "Am I sure? I wish I wasn't." I squeezed my eyes shut, fresh agony washing over me as the mental image flashed again. They were having sex. She was with him and enjoying it. I spat out that last part with a mix of disgust and despair. Natalie gasped, covering her mouth. "I can't believe. Vanessa would never—" Then she stopped herself, seeing the truth all over my face. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, placing a hand on my shoulder in comfort. Her sympathy undid me. My composure cracked, and a ragged sob forced its way out. I turned away, embarrassed to break down, but Natalie moved closer and wrapped her arms around me in a consoling hug. I didn't realize how much I needed that hug. I clung to her, my forehead against her shoulder, as my tears finally flowed. Anger, shock, heartbreak, all of it poured out in a few minutes of broken murmurs and stifled sobs that I couldn't hold back, no matter how tough I thought I was. It was the first time I'd cried in years. Natalie just held on, one hand gently rubbing my back in soothing circles. "It's okay," she murmured. "Let it out. I'm here." Eventually, I pulled myself together, at least enough to straighten up and wipe my face with the back of my hand. I was mortified by my outburst, but Natalie didn't seem to judge me. Her own eyes were shiny with unshed tears of empathy. I have to go back," I said hoarsely, my voice still trembling with residual emotion. She looked at me alarmed. Go back? Jason, you can't go back there right now. Not while they're... How could you face that? A flicker of rage cut through my grief. I have to confront them, I said, teeth gritted. I can't just walk away like I never saw it. I need answers. I paused, breathing hard. I wanted to explode, to demand an explanation, even though some rational part of me said nothing they could say would truly explain or justify this betrayal. Natalie placed a hand on my arm. I understand you need to confront them, but please, promise me you won't do anything stupid. I knew what she meant. She was worried I'd go back and pick a fight with Chad, who could probably crush me in a physical altercation, given his size and temper, or that I'd lose my temper and do something I'd regret legally. I'm not going to get violent, I muttered. As furious as I was, even in that moment, I recognized the folly of attacking Chad. The man was built like an ox, and as an ex-soldier, I knew better than to underestimate an opponent's physical advantage. Plus, any assault charge would only make my life worse. I just need to talk to Vanessa. She owes me at least an explanation to my face. Natalie nodded, but worry etched her brow. Just be careful. Chad might still be there, and I wouldn't put it past him to provoke you. You know how he is. How well I knew. Chad had already taken something dear to me. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of taking my dignity or freedom, too. I took a steadying breath, trying to summon my composure. The initial shock was turning into a steely anger, an anger that demanded I do this calmly and with clear eyes. The soldier in me, trained to operate under stress, was reasserting itself. I got to my feet. Thank you, Natalie, for everything. My voice was quiet but sincere. I don't know how I would have handled the last half hour without her support. She stood up as well, uncertainty in her expression. Do you want me to come with you? Or I could call someone. I shook my head. I need to do this myself. I managed a thin, humorless smile. It's probably best you don't witness the fireworks, but could I ask you one more favor? Anything, she said immediately. If you don't hear from me in an hour or two, just check on me, just in case. I hated to even suggest it, but if something went horribly wrong, I trusted Natalie to have my back. She swallowed and nodded. I will. And Jason, she hesitated, then gave me a quick, fierce hug. You're a good man. Don't let them break you, okay? I closed my eyes briefly, absorbing her words. I'll try, I said, voice rough with emotion held in check. With that, I left her house and walked back to my truck, feeling like I was gearing up for battle. The drive back to my house was a blur. Less than an hour ago, I was a man excited for a tennis match on a sunny day. Now I was a husband who had caught his wife in flagrante with a neighbor, and nothing made sense anymore. A dangerous calm settled over me on that short drive, an almost detached focus. I recognized it as the feeling I'd get before a combat exercise back in my military days. Focus, compartmentalize, execute the mission. My mission now: face my unfaithful wife and get the truth, no matter how ugly. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Chad's black pickup truck was gone. Maybe he had fled the scene, or maybe they had both left together. But no, as I cut the engine, I saw movement through the living room window, Vanessa's silhouette crossing the room. She was still here, likely alone now. Good. I entered my house once more, heart thudding but resolve firm. Vanessa heard me because she appeared at the entrance to the kitchen just as I stepped in. She had thrown on a silk robe, her hair was damp. She must have taken a quick shower. Her face wore an expression of mild surprise that quickly smoothed into a neutral mask. "You're back already?" she said, tone almost casual. "I thought you had a match this afternoon." My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Was she seriously pretending nothing happened? I could still see faint red marks on her neck. Love bites, courtesy of Chad. The audacity, the coldness of her greeting stunned me. I shut the front door and took a few steps forward, unable to tear my eyes from her. My voice came out low and tight. "It got canceled." "That's too bad," she said lightly. "At least it's not too hot out. Maybe you and Natalie can practice or something." I just stared. Was she testing if I knew? Or truly thinking I might not have seen them? Impossible. I'm sure she saw the bedroom door move or heard a sound when I left. Unless they were too, engrossed to notice. It didn't matter. I wasn't going to play games. "We couldn't play because of rain just past their courts," I said flatly. "So we came back. I came back." I paused, measuring each word. "I was here in the house about 20 minutes ago." A flicker of something, recognition, maybe even fear, crossed her eyes. But it vanished quickly. "Oh," was all she said. I stepped closer, feeling a tremor of anger in my limbs. "I saw you, Vanessa." My voice hardened. "I saw you with Chad. In our bed." For a moment, silence. Vanessa's lips parted, and she took a breath as if to say something, then closed them. I braced myself for excuses, for tears, for begging or shouting. Instead, she simply walked over to the dining table and gestured for me to sit down. "We should talk," she said calmly, as if this were a minor issue to discuss over coffee. I remained standing. My hands curled into fists at my sides, not out of a desire to hit something or someone, but out of sheer incredulity. "Talk? That's all you have to say?" I demanded. My voice was rising despite attempts to control it. "I catch my wife screwing our neighbor in broad daylight. And now you want to talk?" She tightened the sash of her robe around her waist, regarding me with an unreadable expression. "Would you rather we shout? I'm trying to keep this civil, Jason." Civil. I almost choked on the word. "You think any of this is civil?" Anger flashed across her face at my tone. "Jason, sit down," she repeated sternly. "You're making a scene." I actually let out a short, hysterical laugh. "There's no one here to make a scene for except you, Vanessa. Believe me, I'm restraining myself as much as I can." She sighed, as if this were a minor inconvenience. "Fine. Stand then. Listen. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I was planning to tell you, just not like this." I stared at her, mouth open. The sheer lack of remorse in her voice was astonishing. "Tell me what exactly? That you've been cheating on me with Chad? That you decided to blow up our marriage on a random Saturday?" She gave a slight shrug. "A few months, maybe. I didn't keep track of dates. A few months. While I was in bed next to her at night, oblivious. While we still went out to dinners or watched Netflix on the couch like a normal couple. The realization made me physically ill. I gripped the back of a chair for support. "Months. And you never thought to mention you were unhappy?" I asked bitterly. "Or I don't know, talk to your husband before screwing around." Vanessa's face hardened. "I tried to bring up my unhappiness so many times, Jason, but you didn't want to hear it. You were always too busy with work or your hobbies. You didn't listen." I tried to recall any time she explicitly said she was this unhappy. Sure, she complained about me missing some of her events or being late to an influencer party once, but we had resolved those small squabbles. Or so I thought. So your solution was to hop into bed with the first jerk who paid you attention, I snapped. Real mature. She bristled. Don't you dare judge me. You have no idea how lonely I felt. Lonely? My voice cracked like a whip. I was right here, every day, doing everything I could for you. I supported your career. I built you a website for your business. I accompanied you to those mind-numbing social media parties. And yet you never really saw me, she interrupted, raising her voice for the first time. You haven't looked at me like you loved me in ages, Jason. You were always too tired, or distracted, or off playing tennis with Natalie. I put up a hand. Oh, don't you dare try to pin this on Natalie and me. I never crossed a line with her, and you know it. She laughed, a cold, brittle sound. Maybe not physically, but emotionally? You clearly enjoy spending time with her more than with your own wife. How do you think that made me feel? The irony was rich. You want to talk about fidelity and emotions when you literally just had sex with someone else in our bed. I was incredulous. If you had an issue with Natalie, we could have talked it through, set boundaries. Hell, I would have cut back tennis if you'd just said the word. But you never did. Instead, you went and found validation with that muscle-bound idiot. Don't call him that, she snapped. Why not? It's true, I shot back. Chad, the guy's a narcissistic blowhard, but I guess he flattered you and you ate it up. Her eyes flashed with anger. Chad treats me like I'm special. He listens to me. He doesn't dismiss my feelings. I shook my head slowly, a grim calm washing over me. Chad likes chasing shiny things, Vanessa. You're just his latest prize, can't you see that? Once the novelty wears off. Stop it, she said, voice sharp. This isn't about him now. It's about you and me, or what's left of us. She took a deep breath. I didn't plan for this to happen, but it did, and now we all have to move on. Before I could respond, she strode out of the kitchen toward our bedroom, only to return seconds later, holding a manila envelope stuffed with papers. With a determined gait, she closed the distance between us and thrust the envelope into my hands. I eyed it warily, opening the flap. Inside were legal documents, a petition for divorce already filled out, and a proposed marital settlement agreement. My heart sank as I flipped through the pages. She'd really been planning this. There, in black and white, were terms of how to divide our assets, accounts, property. It even stated that she waived any claim to alimony. You're divorcing me, I said quietly, a statement more than a question. My hand shook slightly as I withdrew one of the pages fully. Her signature was already on the last line, dated a few days ago. The betrayal kept compounding like a never-ending nightmare. She had been prepping to leave me while I was still sleeping next to her in our bed. Vanessa crossed her arms, watching me carefully. I think this is for the best, she said almost gently. I've made sure the settlement is fair. I'm not asking for any spousal support. I already withdrew my half of our savings and personal accounts. Half of, I sputtered, but she cut me off. Half of what we saved together, she emphasized. I'm entitled to that. And I'm leaving you the house and the equity in it, Jason. It's more than generous on my part. If we fought this out in court, I'd probably get more. I stared at her in disbelief. Generous? She cheats on me, blows up our marriage, but expects me to be grateful she's not taking everything. Generous, I echoed, my tone hollow. Right. She sighed impatiently. Look, my lawyer drafted it to minimize the damage for both of us. If you sign it, we can do this amicably. No protracted fights, no dragging our families through mud. We don't have kids to worry about, thankfully. That word hit me like a slap. Thankfully, I realized then that I was dealing with someone I barely knew. The woman before me, cold, pragmatic, eager to wash her hands of our life, was a stranger wearing my wife's face. The wife I thought I knew must have eroded away sometime in the past year while I wasn't looking. I set the papers down on the table carefully. My pulse thudded in my ears. "So that's it," I said, almost to myself. 10 years together, and you're just done. Just like that. Her jaw tightened. "I'm sorry if it hurts you, but yes, it's done. It hasn't been working for a long time, and we both know it deep down." I opened my mouth to protest, to argue that I would have done anything to fix it if I'd known. Counseling, changes, whatever. But I stopped, because maybe she was right in one respect. Whether it could have been fixed or not, it was moot now. She had already checked out of our marriage and into someone else's bed. A heavy silence fell between us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could hear the faint tick of the wall clock in the other room. It was surreal. How could the world still be spinning normally? A car horn honked outside. We both turned our heads slightly toward the sound. Vanessa walked to the window, pulled aside the curtain just a fraction, and peered out. "It's him," she said matter-of-factly. "Chad's here." I nearly laughed at the absurdity of it. Chad pulling up and honking like this was some teen movie. But the laugh died before reaching my lips. Instead, I felt a wave of humiliation and anger. Not even an hour since I caught them. And here he was, summoning her like he owned her, and by extension, rubbing it in my face that he was taking my wife. Vanessa turned back to me. She must have seen the mixture of hurt and fury on my face. For a split second, her stoic demeanor wavered. She looked almost guilty. But then she squared her shoulders. "I'm going with him," she said. "I'll stay at his place. On Monday, when you're at work, I'll come by to get the rest of my clothes and personal items." My voice, when it came, was icy. "Fine. You do that." I refused to beg or plead. If she wanted to leave so badly, I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me break further. She hovered at the doorway, holding it open. I could see Chad's truck waiting at the curb, engine idling. Her next words were delivered quietly, but they still cut deep. "This doesn't have to be nasty, Jason. If you sign those papers, we can both move on. It's better for both of us." I stared at her, memorizing her face in that moment. The slight impatience, the hint of concern, the self-righteous tilt of her chin, as if she truly believed this was for the best. "Better for you, maybe," I replied softly. "Enjoy your new life, Vanessa. I hope he was worth it." For an instant, she looked like she might say something else. An apology, a retort. I don't know. But she simply pursed her lips, then turned and walked out, shutting the door behind her. I stood rooted to the tile floor of the foyer, hearing the engine rev and eventually fade as Chad drove her away. Away from our home, away from me, and away from everything we had built together. A hollow ache expanded in my chest. I don't know how long I remained there, staring at nothing. Time seemed to have lost meaning. Eventually, I wandered back to the dining table and sank into a chair. The divorce documents lay there, staring up accusingly. My eyes skimmed the text without really reading. It was all legal jargon and blank lines awaiting my signature. A decade of marriage reduced to paperwork. I let out a shuddering breath. That's when the full weight of it hit me, and a torrent of conflicting emotions swept over me. One moment, I was seething with anger at the betrayal and the humiliation of being cuckolded by that buffoon. The next moment, sorrow crashed in. Grief for the love I thought we had, for the life we built that was now in ruins. Then self-doubt. What had I done wrong? What had I missed? Then indignation. I'd been a good husband, damn it. I didn't deserve this. I must have cycled through those feelings a dozen times sitting at that table. Eventually, I noticed the sun had dipped lower, the living room growing dim. I hadn't moved, except to occasionally cradle my head in my hands or to sip the now room-temperature water I'd carried back from Natalie's. Natalie. I suddenly remembered she was likely worrying about me. I pulled out my phone and saw a missed text from her. "Are you okay? Do you need me to come over?" Sent about 40 minutes after I'd left her place. I typed back, "I'm alive." She left. "I'll fill you in later. TAX for being there." I added a quick, "Don't worry, I'm not doing anything crazy," and hit send. Immediately, the phone started vibrating with an incoming call. Natalie. I didn't really feel like talking, but I also didn't want her to fret. I answered, keeping my voice as steady as I could manage. "Hey." "Jason, thank God. I've been worried sick," she blurted out. "What happened? Are you safe?" I closed my eyes. "I'm not hurt, if that's what you're asking." She exhaled in relief. "Okay. And them?" "She's gone," I said quietly. "She left with him. It's over." There was a pause. "I'm so sorry," Natalie said, her voice pained and gentle, "and I can't believe she actually... I'm just so sorry." "Yeah," I replied vaguely. What else was there to say? We spoke for a few more minutes. She offered to come over or to have me come back to her place. Even offered her spare room if I didn't want to be alone tonight. It was tempting. I dreaded the emptiness of the house around me. But I told her I needed a bit of time alone to process. I promised if I felt like I was going to spiral, I'd reach out. Reluctantly, she accepted that and told me to call her any time, day or night. After hanging up, I realized I had to start dealing with practical matters. Vanessa might have been generous in her words, but I wasn't naive. She had a head start in this race, and I needed to catch up to protect myself. My first call on Monday morning was to a divorce attorney, an old college friend named Mark who had helped us draft our wills and had experience in family law. When I told his secretary it was urgent, she squeezed me in for a late lunch slot, and I took it. That gave me a day and a half to endure first. Sunday was possibly the longest day of my life. I didn't step foot outside. I couldn't bear to face neighbors, and I certainly wasn't going to the club where gossip must be buzzing by now. Instead, I spent the day numbly drifting around the house that suddenly felt too large and full of memories. Our wedding photos still hung on the walls. Her clothes still filled half the closet. She hadn't taken everything in that hurried exit. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. At one point, I ventured into the bedroom and was hit by a wall of revulsion. The sheets were still rumpled from their encounter, and though I wanted to burn the entire bed, I settled for stripping it completely. I dumped the bedding in a garbage bag and shoved it in the garage. There was no way I'd ever sleep on those sheets again. A hint of her perfume still lingered in the air, mixed with the bleachy clean scent of whatever body wash she used after. I opened a window to disperse it, but it felt like the violation in that space might never wash away. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay on the stripped mattress in a sleeping bag. I couldn't bring myself to put fresh sheets on yet, and stared at the ceiling fan spinning uselessly. My mind churned through the same painful questions over and over. Why Chad? Was she really that unhappy? Why didn't I see it coming? How could she move on so easily? Did she ever love me in the first place? Or was I just stability until something better came along? By Monday morning, I had no answers, just swollen eyes and a dull headache. But I also had a growing ember of resolve. Perhaps it was anger finally hardening into something more productive. I realized that every minute I sat wallowing was a minute Chad and Vanessa were out there likely celebrating their new life, maybe even mocking me. That mental image, Chad laughing about how he'd won, lit a fire in me. I was not going to be the pathetic victim of this story. My years in the army had taught me many things. One lesson stood out now. When you get knocked down, you regroup, plan, and hit back twice as hard, metaphorically at least, since physically hitting back was off the table. I might have lost my wife and marriage, but I still had my pride and a sense of justice. I wanted, needed, some form of retribution. Not some impulsive, reckless revenge that would land me in jail or deepen my wounds. No, if I did this, it would have to be methodical, strategic, and absolutely devastating to those who had wronged me, all while keeping my own hands technically clean. The more I thought about it, the more that ember of resolve flared into a plan, a dark, satisfying idea that promised at least some redemption. First, though, the legal front needed handling. At noon, I walked into Mark's law office downtown. He greeted me with a sympathetic clap on the shoulder. Apparently, I looked as haggard as I felt. We sat in a glass-walled conference room, and I handed him the envelope of papers. He skimmed the settlement and pursed his lips. "Well, Jason," Mark said carefully, "honestly, it's not a bad deal given the circumstances. It could be much worse for you." I bristled even though I knew he was right. Worse? She already took half our liquid assets and who knows what else. I had discovered Sunday that some valuable things were missing. The fine china set she inherited from her grandma, which she claimed to love but apparently had no qualms taking along. One of our 2 laptops, the nicer one, and oddly, the expensive espresso machine I bought last Christmas. Petty as it was, those small disappearances hurt. Mark adjusted his glasses. "Yes, but if you fought it, she could demand alimony since she was making less than you, or a larger share of the house sale, retirement accounts, etc. This says she wants a clean break. Sometimes a quick, fair split is best to avoid months of legal fees and emotional drain." I sighed. "So you're advising me to sign it?" He tented his hands. "Legally? It's likely the most pragmatic move. Personally?" He looked up at me with compassion. "I'm really sorry, man. I remember you 2 together in college. You seemed solid. I didn't see this coming." "Neither did I replied with a tight throat. He gave me a moment, then spoke gently. "If you want, we can adjust a few terms or add conditions." But I suspect she'd agree readily just to expedite. She clearly has an incentive to push this through quickly. "Yeah, she wants to marry Prince Charming ASAP," I said bitterly. Mark raised an eyebrow. "You mean Chad Larson? I heard something. A few people mentioned they saw him and Vanessa at the club acting awfully cozy. Small world." The thought that rumors were already swirling made my face burn with embarrassment and anger. If Mark had heard, surely the whole community knew by now. Chad probably made sure of it. I imagined him boasting about stealing my wife and felt a surge of determination to wipe that smug satisfaction off his face. "Mark," I said, leaning forward, "legally speaking, is adultery relevant here at all? Texas is no-fault divorce, right? So it doesn't matter that she cheated?" He nodded. "Correct. Texas is a no-fault state by default. Adultery can sometimes factor in property division, or if one party spent a lot of marital funds on the affair. But from what you describe, she didn't exactly drain accounts for him. and she had this settlement ready, which likely means she's not worried about that. I clenched my jaw. No, of course she wasn't worried. She likely thought she covered all her bases. We went over the documents in detail. Mark made a few minor tweaks, like clarifying there were no joint debts she could later saddle me with, and removing a clause about mutual non-disparagement, which he said was too vague. I guess she didn't want me bad-mouthing her or Chad publicly. Huh. Other than that, he said it was straightforward. In the end, I signed. It felt like signing an execution order on a part of myself. But ironically, a bit of weight lifted after. At least that was one step done, like ripping a bandage off quickly. Afterwards, as I got up to leave, Mark gave me a searching look. I know you're angry and hurt. Just be careful, okay? I've seen divorce do a number on good people. Don't let it consume you. His concern was valid, but I forced a reassuring smile. Don't worry, I'm not about to go off the deep end. Just planning some tactical strikes, I added silently, but I kept that to myself. Before heading home, I stopped by my office's HR department to update my records, removing Vanessa as emergency contact, beneficiary on insurance, all those fun things you never think you'll have to change. The HR rep politely helped me fill out forms. When I listed divorce as the reason for changing marital status, I caught him glancing at me with curiosity, maybe sympathy. No doubt I'd be water cooler talk at work soon too. I bit down the bitterness. I refused to hide in shame. I'd done nothing wrong. That evening, back at the empty house, I sat with a notepad. My legal ties to Vanessa were on their way to being severed, but closure wasn't enough. I needed vindication. I needed them to face consequences for the pain they'd caused. Step 1 of my plan was complete. Fortify my position, legal and financial precautions done. Step 2, gather intelligence. I was a trained analyst in the Army, granted in cybersecurity, not exactly 007 espionage, but the principles overlapped. Know your enemy, find their weaknesses. My enemies, such as they were now effectively Chad and, to a degree, Vanessa. What were their weaknesses? Chad's were obvious. Ego, impulsiveness, thinking with his groin, and an overconfidence that made him underestimate others. He loved competition and winning. Clearly, even off the court, he treated stealing my wife like some victory. And importantly, he had a wandering eye. I recalled a neighbor's wife mentioning offhand that Chad had flirted a bit too much at a block party when he'd had some beers, and there were rumors he had casual flings before. Though he wasn't married, there were no vows to break for him until now. Vanessa's weaknesses: vanity, social image, and perhaps jealousy. She always wanted to be admired and envied. She thrived on online attention. Also, though she would never admit it, she could be insecure. She always compared herself with younger, fitter influencers, worrying about losing her looks or status. With those in mind, a broad plan formed, a honey trap for Chad. If I could entice Chad into cheating on Vanessa, it would be poetic justice. It would also humiliate them both publicly if done right. Chad for being caught and betraying the woman he stole, and Vanessa for getting a taste of what betrayal feels like while everyone watched her fall off that pedestal of a perfect new couple. But I'd have to be careful. I couldn't just find any random woman to seduce him. I needed someone truly irresistible to an oaf like Chad, and ideally someone who could also navigate such a setup discreetly. And I'd need evidence of whatever happened, the kind that could be used to publicly shame or pressure them. Adultery might not matter in court, but in the court of public opinion, or at least our community's gossip mill, it would be gold. The more I thought it over, the more I realized I'd need an accomplice to truly pull this off. Specifically, a woman. Not Natalie, of course. The thought of involving her in something like this was absurd and cruel. No, this called for a professional of sorts. Perhaps a private investigator with a female partner who does honey trap gigs. But those mostly do loyalty tests or catch cheating spouses. Here I wanted to create a scenario, not just document one already happening. What about an escort? The idea hit me and I sat up straighter. There are high-end escorts who could play the role of an interested single woman, attend community events as my date, and catch Chad's attention. People might assume I'd found a rebound fling, which is fine. Meanwhile, she could maneuver to seduce Chad when the opportunity arose. It felt seedy to involve prostitution, but this was essentially a sting operation, a means to an end. Plus, the best escorts are often very savvy and discreet. I could probably find one who would relish playing along for the right price. A part of me was a bit uneasy. This was definitely stepping outside my comfort zone. But another part of me, a darker part awakened by the betrayal, was excited at the prospect of turning the tables. Before acting, I needed intel on how to even hire someone like that. This wasn't something I could just Google outright. I didn't want a cheap service or a sting operation landing me in handcuffs. I realized I might know someone who could help. At my job, one of the sales directors, Alan, was known for his entertaining of clients. I'd overheard some talk, half joking, half not, about wild nights out. If anyone had a discreet contact or knew the ropes of such arrangements, it might be him. We weren't close friends, but we got along. The next day at work, I caught Alan during a coffee break and floated a coded query. "Hey, random question," I asked casually when no one else was around. "You ever entertain any, VIP clients from out of town who need companionship?" He nearly choked on his coffee, then gave me a sly, knowing smile. "I see. Haven't pegged you for that type, Jason. You planning a guy's trip or something?" "Or something," I said with a shrug, trying to play it off lightly. "Let's just say I have an extremely personal project that might require a one-time introduction." Alan leaned against the counter, lowering his voice. "I do know an agency, top-notch, extremely discreet, but not cheap. They screen clients pretty heavily, though. They don't just take anyone." I spread my hands. "Think they'd take a boring guy like me?" He chuckled. "Boring, right? I heard about your situation, man. People talk. No judgment here, okay? You do what you need to do." Ah, yes. The gossip had reached work, too. Wonderful. "Thanks, Alan. I'm keeping things quiet, but yes, it's been rough. I appreciate you not prying." "Hey, all good. Anyway, I can text you a number. There's a code phrase. When they answer, ask for a Miss Simone's services for a gentleman's soiree. That will flag you're in the know. Then they'll ask who referred you. Just mention my first name. That should open the door." I nodded, committing that to memory. "Got it." Sure enough, a little later, Alan discreetly slipped me a card with just a phone number and the initial S embossed on it. That evening, with a deep breath, I made the call from my car parked in a quiet corner of a shopping center lot. No way I was doing this from home or where someone might overhear. A cultured male voice answered. "Good evening." I steadied myself. "Good evening. I'm calling to inquire about Miss Simone's services for a gentleman's soiree." There was a slight pause. Then the voice became a touch warmer. "Certainly. May I ask who is referring you?" "Alan S. recommended I reach out," I replied. "Ah, yes. Mr. S. Very well. And whom do I have the pleasure of speaking with?" I hesitated only a second. Using my real name was likely necessary if they vetted clients. "Jason Cooper," I answered. The conversation that followed was one of the more surreal experiences of my life. The gentleman, I later learned he went by Mr. Sterling professionally, was polite but thorough. He essentially interviewed me right then. Age, occupation, what I was looking for in an engagement. I kept things somewhat vague, saying I wanted an attractive companion to join me for a series of social events over a month or so. Someone who could also occasionally distract another male at these events, as part of an elaborate role-play scenario. There was a long silence at my slightly odd request. I worried I'd said too much. But then Mr. Sterling simply said, "That is a rather bespoke request, Mr. Cooper. We can accommodate extended arrangements, but as you might guess, it will come at a premium." I told him money was not an issue if the match was right. We discussed fees that indeed made me gulp internally, but I agreed. Then came security measures. He wanted a phone number. I gave my cell. He would call back after verifying a few things, then provide me a secure login to their website to select an escort. They didn't just send photos via email. It was a whole encrypted client portal. The vetting was efficient. Within 15 minutes, my phone buzzed with a text, an invite link to Club S with a temporary passcode. I tapped it and was impressed to see a sleek, password-protected site. After entering the code, I browsed through a gallery of women. All were stunning, with professional photos and descriptions like Athena, tall, elegant, PhD student, fluent in French, or Sasha, vivacious, athletic, loves sailing and dancing. It felt like shopping for a very expensive car, except the cars were people, which made me feel a little uneasy. But I reminded myself this was a transaction. These women were consenting adults doing a job, likely well compensated. I filtered for someone in her mid to late 20s, strikingly attractive, and perhaps with a hint of feistiness in her profile. I needed a woman who could handle a brute like Chad and think on her feet if things went awry. After narrowing it down to a few profiles, one stood out, Riley, likely a pseudonym. She was described as a former model with a sharp wit, fond of sports and adept in social charades. Interesting. Her photos depicted a tall, golden-skinned brunette with piercing blue eyes and a magnetic smile. She could easily turn heads at any event. I messaged Mr. Sterling through the site, requesting Riley's availability for an extended engagement spanning multiple shorter appearances over the next few weeks. Within an hour, I had confirmation. She was available and willing, given the unique circumstances, and we scheduled an introductory meeting at a neutral location, a high-end hotel bar, 2 days later to discuss specifics and see if there was a fit. A deposit was charged to my card that made me wince, but I authorized it. Revenge, apparently, would not come cheap. During those 2 days, I kept a low profile socially. I went to work, came home, ignored a call from my mother. I wasn't ready to explain things to family yet. I did text with Natalie telling her I was hanging in there and just taking care of paperwork and stuff. She offered again to come by with dinner or just to talk. I thanked her, but said maybe on the weekend I'd be up for company. I wasn't ready to face her in person. I feared she'd see right through me and sense the plotting I was up to. And a selfish part worried she'd talk me out of it from the moral high ground. Better to involve her as little as possible until the deed was done. Finally, the night of the meeting with Riley arrived. I was nervous. Not in a romantic way, but in the way you feel before a clandestine op. I arrived early at the hotel's upscale lounge, scanning for anyone who might know me. Unlikely, since this was across town. I chose a quiet booth in a corner and ordered a whiskey neat to steady myself. At exactly 8 p.m., a woman strolled into the bar who immediately commanded attention. She was wearing a form-fitting navy blue dress that managed to be classy and jaw-droppingly sexy at once. Long legs, confident gait, hair cascading in loose waves. She matched Riley's photos to a T, though in person she was even more striking. Her eyes flicked around the lounge and landed on me. I gave a slight nod. She approached the booth with a warm, professional smile. Up close, I noticed a tiny beauty mark near her left eye. Somehow it added to her allure. "Jason?" she asked, her voice low and smooth. "Yes. Riley, I presume." I stood to greet her, awkwardly unsure if a handshake or something else was appropriate. She solved it by lightly touching my arm. "It's nice to meet you," she said. "Or should I say, to officially meet you, since perhaps we'll claim to have known each other a while." A playful spark lit her eyes. I smiled, feeling some tension release. "Nice to meet you as well. Please have a seat." We sat. I gestured to the server to bring the menu. She casually requested a gin and tonic. There was a moment of quiet as we assessed each other. To my relief, she spoke first. "So, Mr. Cooper, I understand you have a rather elaborate scenario in mind. This isn't a typical booking." Her tone wasn't judgmental, more intrigued. I appreciated her directness. "Yes, it's a bit unconventional," I admitted. "I assume the agency briefed you on the basics." She nodded. "Only that you need a companion for several social events, primarily to make a certain woman jealous and to, how did they put it, distract an unwitting third-party male. They left out any sordid details." Her red lips quirked in a slight grin. I chuckled despite myself. "Sordid as it may be, I'll fill in the context." I took a deep breath and quietly, in as composed a manner as I could, summarized the saga. My wife's affair with this alpha male neighbor, the collapse of my marriage, the humiliation. I explained that I wanted to orchestrate a little payback by setting a trap, making the guy think he could steal my new girl, just like he stole my wife, only to catch him and expose him. Riley listened intently, her expression thoughtful. She didn't interrupt except to occasionally ask a clarifying question, like the general age and vibe of the community events, or how publicly I intended the exposure to be. I was impressed by her focus. When I finished, she sipped her gin and tonic, regarding me over the rim of her glass. "That is quite a story," she said softly. "I'm sorry you went through that." I shrugged, looking away. "Not your concern, I know. I just wanted to be clear that this isn't about me wanting a lovely date. Though you are lovely," I added quickly, not wanting to insult her. "This is about strategy. I need someone to play a role." She tapped a manicured nail on the table, considering. "Well, you're paying for a service. And honestly, this sounds rather fun, in a twisted way. Most guys just want a pretty girl on their arm for a night or some vanilla role play. This has an element of drama and theater." She flashed a grin. "I was a theater kid in another life, so I appreciate that." I found myself grinning back, relieved. "So you're okay with it?" "Oh, I'm more than okay," she said, leaning in slightly. "Let's talk specifics. It sounds like the key is making Chad, good name by the way, very bro-ish, making Chad desire me enough to ditch your wife. Also simultaneously making your wife burn with jealousy, seeing you with me. Correct?" I nodded. "Exactly. If done right, he'll pursue you on his own, thinking it's his idea, and she'll see that maybe grass isn't greener. Then, when he's caught, their shiny new relationship implodes." Riley raised her glass. "Poetic justice served cold. I'm in." We clinked to that. Then the operational planning began. We went over upcoming opportunities. There was a neighborhood pool party that Friday evening, sort of a midsummer bash at the clubhouse. Vanessa and Chad would almost certainly be there, as they'd been basking in attention lately. I told Riley this could be her debut appearance as my new friend. She could show up there with me, let the rumor mill churn. Then 2 days later was a Sunday afternoon mixed doubles tennis match event at the club. I was scheduled to play, though I expected Natalie to forfeit our spot after what happened. We hadn't even spoken about tennis since. Riley suggested maybe she could fill in as my partner if needed. It turns out she actually plays tennis moderately well. That was surprising, but apparently many of her clients loved tennis vacations, so she'd learned. If she played at the event, she could interact more closely, possibly even be around Chad on the court. We also floated the idea of a follow-up party or dinner. Coincidentally, an HOA wine-tasting social was on the calendar for the following weekend. Perfect. The plan was, at each event, she would subtly draw Chad's interest. A glance here, a flirty laugh there. Meanwhile, I'd act like a guy smitten with my new date, giving Vanessa a dose of envy. People would talk seeing me with a woman like Riley so soon. Some might judge, but many would just gossip. Either way, it'd get back to Vanessa, which was fine. Riley even had a stroke of genius. If he's as alpha as you say, nothing will bait him more than thinking you're doing better without your wife, especially with a younger, hotter woman. Guys like that can't stand being outdone. She nailed it. Chad's ego would go into overdrive. We discussed boundaries too. "Do you expect me to actually sleep with Chad?" she asked frankly. I quickly shook my head. Not unless absolutely necessary. I'd rather not cross into anything sexual, for both our sakes. Maybe a compromising situation, like him thinking he's about to get lucky, is enough. We just need to catch him clearly trying to cheat. If it's obvious he's making out with you or undressing you, that should do it. I can intervene before anything more. She nodded, looking relieved. Fair enough. I don't mind flirting heavily or a bit of physical contact, but I'd rather not actually do the deed with that jerk, even if I'm technically paid to do such things. This feels different, like I'm part of a story, not just providing pleasure. That distinction seemed important to her, and I respected it. Finally, we agreed on the gotcha moment. I would catch Chad with her and likely bring Vanessa to witness it in person for maximum effect. Perhaps I'd tip off Vanessa when the moment was right, so she'd walk in on him cheating, just as I had. Riley smirked at that poetic symmetry. We set up a safe word in case things went off rails. Pineapple, the classic, which if she said I'd know to abort mission. We exchanged contact methods. She gave me a separate number to use for planning meetups aside from official channels. By the end of the meeting, I felt almost optimistic. I had a competent ally in Riley, and the plan was coming together. As we parted, she gave me a light peck on the cheek, in character since a few patrons were watching us curiously. "See you Friday, sweetheart," she purred, loud enough for the benefit of onlookers, giving my hand an affectionate squeeze. "Can't wait," I played along, my voice amiable. Driving home, I felt an energy I hadn't had since this nightmare began. It struck me that for the first time in a long while, I was looking forward to something, not just stewing in anger or sadness, but actively moving towards a goal. A slightly wicked, satisfying goal at that. Friday arrived, and with it the pool party. I picked Riley up from a prearranged spot near the neighborhood to avoid suspicion that she didn't live around. She had a tote bag with a swimsuit under her summer dress, ready for poolside fun. I admit, as we walked into the clubhouse area, more than one male eye and a few female followed her. She had that star-quality presence. Vanessa was there, dressed to kill herself, perhaps to reassert her status. But with Riley around, she might as well have been invisible to others. I saw at least two of her frenemies shoot her smug looks as if to say, "Girl, you've been outdone." The event progressed in a blur for me. I made small talk, sipped a little wine, but mainly kept an eye out. Chad was there, though he seemed to give me and Riley space purposely, maybe to not tip off others, or he was playing it cool. Vanessa oscillated between trying to catch my eye, perhaps to confront, who knows, and whispering with her click while eyeballing Riley with daggers. After about an hour, I told some folks we were heading out early, as I had another long day tomorrow. I made sure to swing by Vanessa when leaving. "Good night, enjoy the rest of it," I said politely. She flashed a tight smile. "Leaving so soon? Must be an early night for you two," she remarked, something accusatory in her tone. Riley answered innocently, "Jason promised me a relaxing movie night. I'm holding him to it." That earned a confused, slightly disgusted look from Vanessa, as if, how dare they have a cozy night while I'm here. We exited. I dropped Riley near Chad's street a block away, where she could walk up discreetly. "Be careful," I said, a hint of nerves showing. She winked. "I've got this. I'll keep the phone line open in my purse so you can hear if needed." We had set that up, her phone on call with mine but muted on her end, so I could monitor when time was right. Then I drove off to prepare the final act. My adrenaline was high. I parked a few blocks away and paced, listening through the earpiece to faint sounds of party chatter. Laughter, music in Chad's backyard likely. It seemed only maybe 5, 6 people were there. Fine. At one point I heard Riley laughing at something, then some others saying goodnights. Perhaps the small gathering was breaking up, leaving just Chad and her. Ideal. Sure enough, about an hour in, I heard the telltale signs. Chad's slurred, flirty voice. "So glad you stayed. We finally get some alone time." Riley playing coy. "You have a lovely home, Chad. Surprised you didn't invite more people." Him. "I wanted just you." A bit of silence, maybe moving closer. Time to act. I dialed Vanessa. It rang a few times, then she answered, sounding wary. "Hello?" I spoke in a low, urgent tone. "Vanessa, listen carefully. I wouldn't call unless it was important." She was confused. "Jason, what on earth?" "I'm at Chad's," I lied. I found out something tonight, and you need to see it. Right now. Come to his house. Don't let him know. Just come quietly." Silence, then a scoff. "What are you talking about? If this is some ploy—" "He's cheating on you, Vanessa," I snapped, dispensing with tact. "Right now, as we speak with Riley. If you want to catch him in the act, get over here, that did it." She exploded. "What? You expect me to believe—" "I have nothing to gain by lying. Come see for yourself. If I'm wrong, I'll leave you alone forever. But if I'm right—" I let hang. I could practically feel her turmoil through the phone. Then I added, "Front door's unlocked. I'm going in now." I hung up and quickly turned my phone back to the call with Riley to listen. I heard Chad murmuring, "You're so beautiful," and her responding, "Chad, we shouldn't—" "What about Vanessa?" "Good," she was prompting him. He laughed. "Vanessa doesn't appreciate what a real man can give her. Not like you do." Ugh, such cliché lines. Riley. "Jason." Likely part of script to mention me. Chad cut her off. "Forget him. He can't satisfy a woman like you, can he?" I cringed at his arrogance. Then I heard perhaps kissing sounds. Time to move. I strode up to the house I'd scouted earlier, lights on downstairs only. The front door was indeed ajar, likely other guests left it so. I stepped inside quietly, through the living area towards the den with the couch, guessing location from earlier visit memory of floor plan. There, in dim lamplight, was the sight I'd been waiting for. Chad, shirt unbuttoned, was on the sofa, one hand up Riley's thigh, his lips on her neck. She feigned protest weakly, but he clearly thought it was game on. I almost wanted to take a photo, but decided I'd have enough witnesses in a moment. Instead, I flipped the light switch and announced sharply, "What the hell is this?" Chad jolted, leaping to his feet so fast he nearly tripped, pants undone. Riley yelped and covered her chest with an arm. Her dress strap was off-shoulder, as if they'd been mid-makeout. "Jason?" Chad blurted, face a comical mask of shock and dawning horror. "This isn't what it looks like." "Bull!" I barked. "I trusted you, man. And you—" I pointed at Riley in feigned fury. "How could you do this to me?" I hope my acting sold it. Riley put on crocodile tears instantly, scrambling up. I'm sorry, I didn't mean, it just happened." Chad, possibly still drunk, switched to defensive anger. "Why are you here spying on us? You left. You—" At that perfect moment, another voice cut in. "What the hell is going on here?" Vanessa stood in the entryway from the hall, eyes blazing. She took in the scene. Her fiancé disheveled with another woman, me present looking upset. "Vanessa?" Chad looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Baby, this isn't— I mean—" Her face contorted in rage and pain. "I knew something was off. You lying piece of—" She lunged, slapping Chad hard across the face. He stumbled. Riley slipped out of the way as Vanessa started pummeling his chest with fists. "You said you loved me, that I was the only one. How could you?" Chad tried to grab her wrists. "Calm down." "She meant nothing. It's not what you think." "Not what I think?" Vanessa cried. "I find you here about to screw this tramp and it's not what I think?" She then turned to Riley, venomous. "You bitch! You come into our lives and—" Before she could attack Riley, I stepped between. "Hey, back off her," I said firmly. "Your issue is with your cheating boyfriend. Don't you dare lay a finger on her." Vanessa was shaking, tears of fury in her eyes. "Oh, this is rich, Jason. You defending her? She was sleeping with your friend behind your back." I gave a cold laugh. "Friend? Chad was never my friend if he could do this. And as for her—" I glanced at Riley, who was sniffling convincingly. "I guess I misjudged who I could trust too." Chad found his voice, latching onto anger at me likely to deflect. "You set this up, didn't you?" he shouted at me, realization perhaps dawning that this was too coincidental. "You son of a—" He moved toward me aggressively. I stood my ground, actually itching for him to throw a punch so I could finally physically fight back with moral high ground. "Go ahead," I taunted quietly. "Hit me. Add assault to your stellar night." He hesitated, fists clenching. But then Vanessa stepped beside him, facing me with pure contempt. "This was a trap, was it?" she asked, voice trembling. I met her gaze evenly. "Does it matter? The truth is out. He would cheat on you at first opportunity, just like you cheated on me." She flinched. Meanwhile, Chad looked between us, confused but angry. "Trap or not, you," he pointed at me, "are a psycho. And you, to Vanessa. Why are you mad at me when he clearly orchestrated this whole thing? I'm the victim here." That made all of us stare at him incredulously. Riley couldn't suppress a disbelieving laugh, which didn't help his temper. "Shut up," he barked at her. "Wrong move." Vanessa turned on him again. "Don't yell at her. This is on you, Chad. I gave up everything for you. My marriage, my reputation. People in this town see me as a cheating whore because of you. And now you're doing the same to me without a second thought?" Her voice cracked on a sob. For a second, I almost felt pity. She really was tasting the bitter betrayal she dealt me. Chad threw up his hands. Jesus, Vanessa, it was just a fling. I mean, can you blame me? You're always nagging lately, and he gestured to Riley. She was just available. It's not like I don't want you. I closed my eyes at the sheer stupidity of his words. This was not going to end well for him, and I was fine with that. You pig! Vanessa shrieked and went at him again, nails out. He grabbed her arms roughly this time to stop her. Get a hold of yourself. Riley moved to stand by me, whispering, maybe time to end this? The chaos was descending into pure domestic violence territory. I stepped forward. All right, enough. I'm calling the cops if you two keep this up. That startled them apart. Both were breathing hard, staring daggers. Chad looked like he'd love to throttle someone, but worried about police, given his macho pride, being arrested would kill his image. Vanessa finally straightened, wiping her eyes. She looked at me with a mixture of humiliation and grudging respect. You planned all this, she said hollowly, to humiliate us. I met her gaze calmly. I planned to show you both what it feels like, and looks like I succeeded. Chad spat on the floor in my direction. Get the hell out of my house, all of you! Gladly. I gently took Riley's arm and began to move toward the door. Vanessa, voice icy, said to Chad, "We're not done." Then she followed us out, surprisingly. Outside, the air was cool and still. Vanessa stood on the porch as I escorted Riley to my car. To my surprise, my ex-wife called softly, "Jason." I paused, turning. She looked small, defeated. "Are you happy now?" she asked quietly. Was this enough revenge? I inhaled. Was I happy? I felt satisfied, yes. Not joyous, but like a weight had lifted. I didn't do this to be happy. I did it to make a point. We could have had a respectful end, but you chose to treat me like garbage. Now he's treated you the same. Maybe you'll think about that. She looked like I slapped her. I never meant to. I held up a hand. No more. We're done, Vanessa. Papers signed. Everything settled. I'd appreciate if you don't contact me anymore. She nodded slowly, another tear escaping. I'm sorry, she whispered. Whether to me or just in general, I'm not sure. I gave a curt nod and got in the car. Riley was already in passenger seat. As I started the engine, I glimpsed Vanessa in the rear view, standing alone under the porch light, arms hugging herself. As inside, we heard Chad cursing loudly and something shattering. Glass thrown? Who cares? I drove away, heart pounding as the adrenaline finally began to ebb. It was over. Riley let out a long breath. My God, that was intense. I glanced at her and suddenly realized what an ally she had been. I pulled over just down the street and looked at her seriously. I can't thank you enough. You were brilliant. She broke character then, grinning wide. Was I? I felt like I was over the top. No, it was perfect. The way you got him to incriminate himself. I'm frankly in awe. She touched my hand. How do you feel? I considered. Free, I said honestly. Relieved. She nodded. Good. Then my job is done. A brief shadow crossed her face. I'll have the agency finalize the invoice. They might change my login now that assignment is over, so if you need to reach me. In that moment, I realized she thought I'd just say goodbye here. And why not? Our arrangement was transactional, but we'd grown oddly friendly through this. Stay in touch, please, I said. I mean, not as a client, as a friend, if you'd like. Her brows raised, then she smiled warmly. I'd like that. We said our goodnights with a hug. She walked to her car around the corner where she had stashed it earlier. I sat there a moment alone. It was past midnight. What now? A single text buzzed on my phone. It was from Natalie. Just a simple emoji, a small red heart. She had no idea what had just transpired, but maybe she sensed I needed support, or she was just checking in. Either way, that little symbol of care melted something in me. I texted back, "Hey, are you awake? Can I come over to talk?" The reply came quick, "Yes, I'll put on the kettle." I smiled for what felt like the first time in ages, a genuine smile not tinged with anger or cunning. Then I drove to Natalie's house, ready to close this chapter of my life for good, and perhaps, cautiously, to open a new one with someone who had truly been there for me through it all.